Welcome to day 23 of the federal election campaign, which means there are just 2 weeks to go until Canadians cast their votes. And I made this because of a headline I just saw. You guys remember how Doug Ford's campaign manager accused Poilievre's Conservatives of campaign malpractice at the, quote, highest level? Well, Doug Ford just came out and said, quote, sometimes the truth hurts.
You are f***ing gay 90 times? You bitch!
But that is not all that has happened on the campaign trail over the weekend and today, and you know I've got your update, so here's what's going on. Over the weekend, both Marc Carney and Pierre Poilievre did Tout Le Monde on Parle. It's a huge Quebec talk show, and they were both interviewed in French. They were both pressed on a bunch of issues, and most of the answers they gave tended to be stuff we had already heard from them. Poilievre was pressed on being like Trump, and he said he's not like him because he was not born into money and he has more empathy. And Carney defended his knowledge of Quebec culture and actually got a few laughs when he made some references. One thing that came up during these interviews that did carry over into today was something that Carney said in response to a question. He was asked how he differentiates himself from Trudeau. In response, Carney said that he does share values with Trudeau and with the Liberal Party, but that he puts more of an emphasis on the economy than Trudeau did.
Gay 90 times?
Another thing that happened over the weekend that I didn't see anybody report on, but I find kind of mind-blowing. Poilievre sat down for an hour and 20-minute conversation with this podcaster who claims that his podcast isn't political. But he was wearing a t-shirt that said Build Canada, which set off some of my spidey senses. Because if you remember from a few months ago, when Build Canada was launched, myself and several other reporters covered it. Because it was basically all CEOs, and there were more people named Michael involved than there were women. And their whole thing was that they were giving policy ideas to politicians. So they were like writing them up and even making suggestions about how the actual policy would be drafted. And there were a bunch of Shopify people involved with this project, and that raised some eyebrows and concerns that we might be seeing the burgeoning of Canada's tech broligarchy. Oh, and according to this article from the Thaïs, Jen St. Dennis, the guy who actually interviewed Poilievre, Shane Parrish, wrote on December 19th, quote, I want DOGE to exist in Canada. The interview was also immediately amplified by Shopify executives. And to be clear, that guy Shane is involved with Build Canada. Anyways, not necessarily anything wrong here. Tech bros are allowed to be interested in politics, but you do have to consider the amount of money and power that they bring to the table when they decide that they want to have some kind of political involvement. Also, the interviewer Shane Parrish said that he reached out to both Poilievre and Marc Carney and said that Marc Carney also accepted, but they haven't filmed yet, so I'll keep my eyes peeled to see if that actually goes ahead. The other big story from the weekend was the buttons. According to reporting from CBC News, some Liberal Party campaigners went to a Conservative conference and planted some pins that kind of sowed division within the party and suggested some election denial. And then they went to a bar and they bragged about it within earshot of a journalist and a Conservative staffer who both independently heard the conversation and confirmed that it happened. Anyways, the whole thing was just really boneheaded, and Marc Carney came out today and confirmed that it happened, but said that he did not sign off on it. Take a listen.
Look, this is totally unacceptable, to be absolutely clear. And I, on behalf of my campaign, I was unaware of this behavior, but on behalf of my campaign, I apologize for it unreservedly. Okay? I've made it absolutely clear to my campaign that this behavior or anything approximating it or in that spirit is unacceptable, cannot happen again.
He also said that the campaigners who did this have been reassigned within the campaign.
The responsible people for this issue have been reassigned within the campaign.
And a little programming note here. The amount of backlash that I got for sharing this story was absolutely wild. And I do just want to say that I hope that your support of my work isn't contingent on me being blind to any one party's mistakes. I do understand why the idea of something being overheard at a bar might sound shaky on the face of it, but major newsrooms do have editorial standards. And we have to have a degree of trust in that and trust in the idea that they will correct errors if they do make a mistake. Otherwise, it'll be basically impossible to be informed. Don't let your support of any one party get in the way of trying to be as informed as possible. My refusal to both sides things and the fact that I interrogate the idea that objectivity is possible doesn't mean that I am a partisan or will be blind to the mistakes of any given party. So if you don't like that, then you probably won't like my journalism. And if you do, I really appreciate that you stick around. Moving on. There were a few different announcements today from the various party leaders, but one kind of overshadowed them all, so I'll just quickly mention the other two. Carney had a big defense announcement today saying that he would set up a defense procurement agency to streamline military equipment purchasing, prioritize buying Canadian raw materials for defense, and set up a Bureau of Research, Engineering, and Advanced Leadership in Science for issues like AI and cybersecurity. The NDP's Jagmeet Singh announced a healthcare workforce strategy to try to address the nursing shortage. But this was the big one. Poilievre announced today that he would use the Notwithstanding clause to overturn a Supreme Court ruling. This is a clause in the Charter that gives parliaments in Canada the power to override certain portions of the Charter, so override rights and freedoms for 5-year terms when they're passing legislation. And Poilievre said he'd use it to make sure that people who have committed multiple unalivings kick the bucket in prison. Because the Supreme Court found that a Harper-era policy that let judges hand out consecutive 25-year blocks of parole ineligibility in cases of multiple first-degree unalivings violated the Charter. In their 2022 ruling, the Supreme Court wrote that consecutive periods of parole ineligibility are, quote, intrinsically incompatible with human dignity because of their degrading nature. Poilievre was also asked, since he'd be willing to be the first prime minister to invoke the Notwithstanding clause, whether he would be willing to do so in other circumstances. In response to that, he said that they will only use the Notwithstanding clause to, quote, fight crime.
We will only use Section 33 to fight crime. We will only use it to end the liberal crime wave, which they have unleashed with catch-and-release hug-a-thug laws.
That's specific. His announcement today came under fire from his political opponents, like Mark Carney, who called it a, quote, very dangerous step.
I think this is a very dangerous step. We have a Charter of Rights and fundamental freedoms in this country, and it's the responsibility, in my view, of the Prime Minister, of the Government of Canada to defend that Charter, those fundamental rights and responsibilities and liberties that Canadians enjoy.
DP leader Jagmeet Singh also said it is, quote, wrong to use the Notwithstanding clause to override Charter rights. I should note that while Poilievre would be the first prime minister to ever invoke the Notwithstanding clause, he wouldn't be the first to do it. It's gotten increasingly popular among the provinces, which is a bit concerning. It's come up in Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Ontario. And there has been discussion of its use elsewhere. So if we could maybe calm down with all the overruling of Charter rights, that'd be great. The last thing I'm going to note, and I'm going to do it in front of this image because I love it, is that the debate topics have been released, so we know what the leaders are going to be talking about this Wednesday and Thursday. And just a reminder, I will be live on Twitch during both debates, so please come hang out if you want to be a big nerd with me. But here are the topics. For the French debate, we've got cost of living, energy and climate, trade war, identity and sovereignty, and immigration and foreign affairs. And for the English debate on the 17th, we've got affordability and the cost of living, energy and climate leading in a crisis, public safety and security, and tariffs and threats to Canada. So yeah, I hope to see you guys on those nights. And that is the latest from the campaign trail. I will see you again tomorrow for your next update. Until then, what do you think of all of this?